So this one is for to keep me from being depressed. This one is for keeping me to have anxiety. Then you have this one to keep me from having nightmares and hallucinations about my son. And that's my life. Jamal was 19 years old when he died.
Mental health experts are noticing an alarming trend. The rate of suicide among African American men and boys is climbing.
Back now with a crisis in our country, a staggering rise in suicide attempts by Black children.
Historically, suicides have been higher among white Americans. However, recent findings show from teams like Jeffrey Bridge and Ariel Sheftal, they show that suicides among Black children in particular have increased. Researchers are trusted with the responsibility to offer insight and to inform policy, but the people who are actually included in these research studies do not come from underrepresented groups. It makes it much more complicated and challenging for researchers to really, I think, have any sort of confidence that the work that they produce actually applies to the experiences of people from marginalized communities. I think that a lot of people don't recognize that since the 1980s, suicide has actually been a leading cause of death among Black males ages 15 to 24. Since then, another new trend that's emerged from the data in recent years is that typically males and females, there's a pretty big gap in terms of who dies by suicide. However, Black girls in particular have had one of the sharpest rises in suicides in recent years. We know that there's perceptions around violence in Chicago, even by people who don't live here, how politicians, talk about violence in Chicago in ways that are very disingenuous and in ways that really don't honor the humanity. It just seems like there's not a real concern. People just think Chicago violence, Black communities in Chicago violence. My colleague and I analyzed the suicide rates from the Cook County Medical Examiner's archive, and we found that suicides rose among Black women and men in Chicago between 2015 and 2021. When looking at the method people use, Black males in Chicago were the most likely to die by suicide using a gun. Everyone else used different methods. And Illinois has some of the most restrictive gun laws compared to many of the other states.
I went and spoke with a group of about 200 African American boys with my fraternity. And one of the questions I asked a group of boys was, what stresses you out? What are some of your fears? A 10-year-old boy stood up and said, death. And when he said that, the room became silent. And after the little boy said it, other boys confirmed it. I guess they just wasn't brave enough to say it out loud, but a 10-year-old did. I think that's the number one thing that our children are dealing with, just about, am I valued in this world as a Black child? And that's very sad to hear. Are our babies traumatized just for being Black? Absolutely. It's the messages that they get.
I feel like you get looked down at.
How often would you say you heard the N-word?
It's an everyday thing.
They're told their hair isn't pretty. They're told that their features aren't beautiful.
It's part of my culture, and it's my heritage. It's being violated.
As you kept reading, it just added more and more hairstyles that were natural and mostly worn by Black people.
They're supposed to be a symbol of strength. But then we're told we don't need you to be thinkers.
So keep the political commentary to yourself, or as someone once said, shut up and dribble.
We see that racism in its different forms impact well-being and development.
Show me the ugly child.
There are longitudinal studies that confirm that racial discrimination experienced by Black youth and felt by Black youth has direct implications for their mental health and suicide risk later on. However, racism is deeper than these interpersonal interactions. Racism is felt and seen in the built environment. So do I have access to mental health treatment? Do I have insurance? Are there places where I can go and have the freedom and joy and wonder of being a child? Or am I faced with these very serious structural issues around violence and food insecurity and material hardship and poverty.
Our children are seeing it as the only alternative. And with the pressures and the demands that's put on our children, and then if you think about the part that social media plays on our children, the rates of being bullied, the sense of, I don't belong anywhere, where's my place? That's a lot to deal with as a kid. We can't do this by ourselves. This is going to take a whole community, a whole village to keep saving lives out here in the world. I will want them to hear that, child, you matter. You are loved. You're a gift. And maybe you don't see how important you are right now, but you will be.
Suicide is something we need to be comfortable talking about. We have to be able to talk about how we feel. My son did a great job not doing that because of many factors, I believe. Not wanting me to worry as a mother and single mother, not presenting himself as a weak person who couldn't handle things, and he isolated himself. It is so imperative for us as parents, as mothers and fathers, as loved ones of people, young and old, who deal with this mental health and suicide thoughts and ideations, to understand that it's okay to not be okay. I didn't do a good job of telling him that. But I do think that what I could say about Jamal is that he raised my awareness to the importance of love and life. At the end of the day, some of this crap don't matter. What you open the door and come home to, that matters.